Hi guys! In today's video I would like to continue from where we have left off, which was talking about the formula method of calculating break-even level of output. And this we have already talked about, but very quickly. So again, I would just like to sum up how we can derive the formula if you don't remember how to calculate it. We remember the concept of contribution per unit. We remember that contribution is something that the business needs in order to cover the fixed costs, and anything that is left over is going to help them make profit. So at the break-even level of output, you should remember that in the graph I was showing that the total contribution equaled the fixed costs. So this is something that we are starting with. That's the starting point. And if we somehow break down total contribution, how do we calculate total contribution? We know that it's contribution per unit times output. So here we already have the output part. Now, if we rearrange the formula, we know the fixed costs equals contribution per unit times output. And we want to ask ourselves, what is the level of output that we need in order to cover the fixed costs? Then what we need to have is to just put the output on one side and all the other variables on the other side. So we rearrange the formula and we get the final formula that we've learned. Break-even output equals fixed cost divided by contribution per unit. And as you know, contribution per unit is defined as price minus variable cost per unit. So you can even break that down further. The advantage that we should have figured out already by now is that the formula gives much more accurate answer than readings from graphs. Graphs are fun if you have nice lines and everything is sort of rounded up and all the numbers fit. But if the break-even level of output is 16.666.6 units, then that would be very hard to read from a graph. And that's where the formula gets handy, becomes useful. There are other uses for break-even formulas, and it's to calculate targets. So the business might, see what is the break-even level of output, how much does the business need to make in order to get to that point where they're not making any loss anymore. However, since most of the businesses' goal is to maximize profit, they might not be interested in that break-even level of output as much. They will be interested in calculating what should be the level of output for me to make in order to achieve some kind of other target. So it can be used as we can be interested in calculating the output needed to achieve our target profit. Let's say that my business decides, I want to have a profit of $100,000. What is the output needed in order to achieve my target profit? This might be useful for businesses that have a fixed rate of return as an objective, for example. Or another target that we can be calculating is revenue. Our mother company, our shareholders or whoever is going to set a target revenue for us. And we might want to know what would be the break-even revenue for us. So how much would I need to be selling? What would be the total sales for me to break even? So here we wouldn't be interested in the target profit, but the target break-even revenue. Break-even revenue can be defined as the amount of revenue needed to cover both fixed and variable costs so that the business breaks even. So here we will not be interested in the level of output, but in terms of money, the sales. It would not be measured in units the same way as we are measuring break-even output. This might be useful for service providers, just lawyers or surveyors, who want to know how much income the business needs to cover all its costs. Yeah, because a lot of the times, especially when if you have different products, you're not measuring your outcome in units, but rather in revenue. So this is also useful. And you can also use it in order to calculate a target price. And by target price, we mean what should be the price that the business should charge in order to break even at a certain level of production and given costs. So here, it's like first we're calculating what is the, let's say, maximum or current level of production that we can produce. We will calculate the costs, and only based on that we might calculate our target price. So this here, when using this method, we will not be creating our price based on what the market expects or what the customers are willing to pay, but it would be working from our costs. It would be based on the input data from the business. Now, based on all these different targets, we can adapt the formula, the break-even formula that we had originally. We can adapt it to calculate each of these things. So this is the formula that we're starting with. If we want to calculate the output needed to achieve a certain target profit, then basically we just add the target profit amount to the fixed costs, and then we will figure out what is the needed output in order to achieve this much profit plus the fixed costs. I'm not going to explain further if you don't understand it at this point. I hopefully will try it out, test it out, these formulas in the exercises. Don't worry, you'll eventually remember these formulas after using them. Then the target break-even revenue, that could also be calculated using the original formula, but just rearranging it a little bit. And the final resulting formula of adaptation would be this one. Break-even revenue equals fixed costs divided by 1 minus variable cost per unit minus price. Okay. Then we can have the target price formula would be break-even level price equaling variable cost per unit plus fixed cost divided by production output. You can try it out, try to get there, for example, from the original formula. Try to rearrange it yourself just for practice, just to make sure that you understand how we got there. It might be a good way how to practice also some math skills. And definitely you're going to need to know the formula for calculating profit. So here I'm again referring to that long profit formula that we were showing on the board in class, where profit equals total revenue minus total costs, but then each of those is broken down into more precise variables. In general, the break-even analysis has its benefits and limitations, obviously. The benefits depends what we're talking about, which method of break-even analysis we are describing. So the charts that we were drawing, they're relatively easy to construct once you get the hang of it and interpret. So they're quite easy to read. In general, the analysis provides useful guidelines, so something useful for the business, the break-even points, safety margins, profit loss levels at different rates of output. All things that we've tried in our previous exercises. You can also make comparisons between different options by drawing graphs or different situations. And if you use the equation, then it even provides a precise break-even result. And obviously, all of those can assist managers when making decisions. Now, this I think that we've covered pretty well, the benefits. Now, what about the limitations? That's something that perhaps we have not covered in class yet. So, break-even analysis, it doesn't assume the existence of semi-variable costs. Yeah, as you could have seen, one of the type of costs that we've covered when it comes to how they relate to output, whether costs increase with the output produced or stay the same, or what. We used to split those types of costs into fixed costs, variable costs, and semi-variable costs. But in the break-even analysis, we only use fixed costs and variable costs. So we don't assume the existence of these semi-variable costs, and that is a limitation. It won't give, therefore, very precise results. Also, there's an assumption that all produced units are sold. Okay, we're not considering whether the produced units will be left in stock. There's no allowance for that, and that is definitely going to make our results imprecise. And the cost and price data are often different than the estimates used in the analysis. So yes, the break-even analysis is basically going to be as useful as the estimates that we insert into the calculations. There is an unrealistic assumption that fixed costs won't change at higher levels of output. So that is something that we kind of discussed. We're only assuming linear lines. We're not counting with any economies of scale. We are not counting basically with any changes, pretty much. And the assumption that costs and revenues are always represented by straight lines is unrealistic as well. Yeah, that is referring to the economies of scale. The benefits and limitations we're often going to cover when talking about different tools. This might seem like it's not useful or that it's boring, but actually this is very useful for those 10-point essay questions in paper 2 exam. Yeah, where you need to actually make an argument why the manager should be, listening to the break-even analysis or should not be making decisions based on it, and so on. So definitely do pay attention to these slides where we're discussing benefits and limitations. The assumption that costs and revenues are always represented by straight lines is unrealistic. And here I just wanted to point out what could be the problem that might cause. So if, for example, labor costs increase with higher output, for example, if you're paying overtime, then the total costs might be actually increasing. If there would be economies of scale, on the other hand, they would be kind of the other way around, like downward sloping. But there might be another one. Revenues might decrease with output, because of price reductions and so on. So based on that, the lines can have different shapes than what we studied. And this can cause the creation of two break-even points, as you can see. Break-even point 1, break-even point 2. So when this happens, how can the business decide which one to listen to, right? They would need to probably draw it on the graph, see what do we mean, like where is profit happening. You can even either have maximum profit happening here, but you would need to realize that this could happen, okay, and to actually be aware and not be counting with, let's say, with this level of output, because that would, on the other hand, actually lead you to a higher loss rather than higher profit. Okay, so right now I would like to give some space for exercises. Let's practice, and then let's see where we make mistakes so that we can base our next lesson off of that.